In 2014, I think prices are actually going to stabilize. Because the way I see it, we had a pretty balanced market in 2012, 140 million ounces or so. Demand grew by 8%, supply grew by about 18%, and a lot of that was ETF selling. So if you go to 2014, look at that. If you remove the 25 million ounces that we had in ETF selling, and assume, say, that demand stays stable at 0% growth in 2014, you're actually going to have a deficit of about 15 million ounces in 2014. So I think that should be quite supportive. And what would kind of cause that deficit to disappear, you'd have to have demand to actually shrink by 10% year over year in 2014 for that balance to happen. So I think generally it's all down to the ETF selling, and that is basically driven by sentiment, and that's driven by what happens in inflation in China and India vis-a-vis the US, those types of parameters out there.
So you're putting this down to the Chinese buyer. You think that there will be some support from that side of the world, and right throughout this year as gold prices have been sliding, we have seen just this trickle through of news events where the Chinese are still buying the hard bullion. What is supportive of that? Because it seems as though the Chinese market is opening up to other investors. Why are the Chinese still going to have this love affair with bullion?
There does seem to be a lot of demand still for safe haven assets. So you can see it even in Vancouver real estate prices. You can see it in gold, you can see it in other assets, but they're very restricted in what they can buy. And
well, why not buy the US dollar as the yield starts to get more supported around that 3% mark? Why don't you see the Chinese start to change their positioning towards US treasuries?
It's probably in part cultural as well. I mean, there is definitely a history there, especially over the last 10 years or so, to buying gold vis-a-vis India, for example. But China's now displaced India as the #1 buyer in the world, and there's a reason for that. And I think part of that is definitely cultural. But the other reason, I think, is just restrictions on what they can buy, what's easy to buy, perhaps. What's maybe the low cost of commission might play a part in that.